I still remember the sound. Not thunder, not the river. The sound of metal on stone at 6 in the morning. I was half asleep when my neighbor called and said he was sending me a clip. I opened the message and watched my grandfather's bridge fall. Not a storm, not time, a bulldozer. In the video, she laughed. A woman with sunglasses, a clipboard, and the power to make that machine move. They filmed it. They posted it. My hands were shaking. The bridge had nothing but river under it for 80 years. My grandfather built it with his hands in 1943. He used stone he quarried himself. He put his name on a beam so the kids in the valley would always know who built the road. I grew up running across that bridge in summer. It was our lane to the orchard, our place for catfish in long summer heat. My first kiss was on that bridge. It is not just wood and stone. It is memory. It is my family. Watching a machine take it away felt like someone had reached into my chest and taken my childhood out. What I did next surprised everyone who knew me. I suppose I acted like any ordinary man who finds a camera of his grandfather's world being trashed. I got angry. I drove the dirt road to their subdivision. I wanted to talk. I wanted to yell. I wanted them to feel the same ache. But when I arrived, things had already gone further than the video suggested. They had painted over the stones with yellow tape and posted a sign about flood hazard. No permit on the sign. No notice. Just a crew and a smile. Darlene Pritchett was the name on the videos. She was the president of Meadowbrook Estates HOA. They called the bridge an eyesore. They called it a liability. They did not say it was built by a man who had fixed engines for the mill and taught my father to read the stars. I called a lawyer. He told me to file an emergency complaint. The county told me to be patient. Patience sounded like permission to them. Over the next week, they came to my gate with county inspectors. They wrote me citations for a stack of firewood, for an old truck with expired registration, for a trailer I had no idea was illegal. 3 citations, 5, 10, each one small, each one like a dripping faucet wearing a hole in my wallet. And always that other sound humming somewhere in the background. The hum of people recording, of board members sharing the clip over coffee. They wanted me embarrassed. They wanted me small. I promise you this. The first night, I slept in the truck on the old service road, staring at the place my grandfather had built. I wonder how a person decides to bulldoze the past without even asking. I wondered what law allows someone to take a family's memory and sell it to the cameras. When the county told me their demolition was authorized, I knew the fight would not be only for the bridge. It would be for truth. It would be for the record. At the end of that week, I got a call from a young reporter. She said she wanted to come out and see the property records. She said something else that made my teeth hurt. You might own more than you think, she said. I dismissed it at first. How could anyone hear 8 decades of land and not know what it meant? But the next day, I went to the courthouse with her. I did not know then that the script of this whole fight would turn not on passion, but on paper. Not on outrage, but on a faded, typed line filed in 1939 that had quietly given me more leverage than I could have imagined. Why I'm telling you this up front, because if you had seen the bridge fall the way I did, you would want to know how a single man could turn the tables on people with a lot of money and a board that thinks it can break whatever it wants. Because this story is not only about one bridge. It is about what happens when private power crosses a line and forgets that law and memory are still in the same room. Stay with me. The next thing I found changed everything. Because sometimes the most dangerous things are quiet mistakes on a piece of paper. And those mistakes can be the difference between being a powerless neighbor and being the owner of the only road out. I thought that when the bulldozer left, the problem was obvious. Someone broke the law. Someone should answer. But the law is a field with many gates. The reporter who called me was named Lila. She had a little notebook and an impatience that matched mine. She started at the courthouse records office. We sat together in a room that smelled like ink and old coffee. The clerk pushed a cart of ledgers toward us and the keys to 80 years of decisions. The first ledger had my grandfather's signature. The deed read like a promise. But then we found something else. An old route. A line called Old Mill Road. It ran from my property up past their cul-de-sac and cut through a forgotten swale to the county highway. On paper, the line was a road. But there was no notation that the county had ever accepted it. Acceptance matters. A county-accepted road is maintained. It is public. Utility trucks can legally use it. Emergency services can drive it without permission. But if a road was never deeded to the county, it is private. I sat in the records room, and my lungs stopped for a second. This old mill road threaded past their backs. It was the only practical second exit for their neighborhood. It was the route rescue trucks used on paper. But on paper only. When I read the little typed line that said the county never took it, the world tilted. If Old Mill Road was private and belonged to me, their access depended on my permission. That was not a threat. It was a fact. We kept digging. There was another file, yellowed and folded, marked utility easement. Their sewage line ran across my land. So did a power line. But here the dates mattered. Easements often include renewal language. If you fail to renew, you lose the right. If a company forgets to file the renewal, the easement can expire. In one dusty envelope, we found a renewal form that had never been returned. The county had a note, renewal not received. I remember how the clerk said it. Quiet, like closing a book. Expired, she said. Lila looked at me with an expression I have seen on detectives in movies. Do you have any idea, she said, what 85 homes do without sewage and power? At that moment, the fight shifted. It was no longer a sentimental battle about a bridge. It was a chess match where a single misplaced comma or a missed form could bring a whole neighborhood to its knees. We were careful. We did not shout. We collected copies, not accusations. We verified dates. We photographed stamps. When a reporter asked for bank records connected to the HOA, she got nervous calls. Darlene cleared her throat on the phone like someone practiced in public charm. Her statements to the journalist were polished, public, small talk about community standards. But the records were not small talk. They suggested transfers to accounts that did not match maintenance projects. They suggested a line of funds in a hidden account. Embezzlement is always a story of routine. We handed a copy to a county investigator. He did not smile. He asked questions in a slow, careful way that meant he believed the paper. If you're wondering how to beat a community with money and lawyers, the answer is not to shout louder. The answer is to read the room they forget they are keeping at home. Our small room with ledgers and a reporter's recorder sounded like a bomb the day the investigator told us he would open a case. Rehook 2, you may be thinking now that this is a story about paperwork. It is, but it is also about choices. There is one more discovery that turned this from an investigation into leverage. It was a single line on a page that Darlene had quietly assumed no one would read. That line set up a choice they could not live with. Later, when I would sit at the mediation table and watch her lawyers look at me, I would remember the clerk's fold. I would remember the way she flicked a pencil and said, "This is interesting." A moment that changed everything, but discovery is only the first step. You can find weaknesses in a building, in an agreement, in a bureaucrat's file. The hard part is deciding what to do next. Do you file everything and wait for the system to move? Do you use the knowledge as leverage? Do you run to television and feed the outrage machine? I will tell you what I did. I built a plan that used law, the press, and common sense. I would not burn the neighborhood. I would not hold them hostage. I would set a price that made them prefer resolution to chaos. And for those who think that is cruel, remember my grandfather's name had been chiseled into that beam for nearly a century. Nobody who pulled a machine through that beam would walk away without paying. There are things people do when they think they will not be caught. They split invoices into pieces. They use committees to launder decisions. They sign minutes with phrases like community improvement to hide what the money actually bought. We uncovered transfers from the HOA account to a private account. We followed that money. It led to a contractor who did not exist and to a chain of checks written with care. Lila published a piece. The local paper put it on the front page. The story read like a ledger of betrayal. Missing funds, questionable contracts, and a president who loved the camera. Then the calls began. Some were threats. Some were small apologies. One was from a county commissioner who, it turned out, was boyfriend to Darlene. He had been helpful in the past when the HOA needed a permit quickly. His name was on a chain of emails. A permit approved quickly is not a crime. But when you can arrange the political favor to run ahead of public safety, you move from the world of normal mistakes into the world of misuse. The county opened an investigation into the permit. That investigator called me personally. He said he needed any evidence I had about the demolition and the Clear Bridge site. He asked for video of the bulldozer, for the HOA's minutes that authorized demolition, for receipts. We had none for the demolition. We had a video that proved it happened. We had a laugh track on the footage, a woman holding a clipboard like she was staging a scene. Public outrage is a powerful ally. When neighbors who had once signed petitions for community rules started to read about embezzlement, they changed. Their tone shifted at HOA meetings. Friends became witnesses. Darlene tried to keep control by using small legal annoyances. The code enforcement citations kept coming. They were always for small things because small things are cheap to file and expensive to litigate. We sat with our lawyer and tallied what we had. Evidence of demolition without permit. Expired easement for utilities. A private road that belonged to me. Questionable transfers from HOA funds. A local politician who expedited permits without clear oversight. And the bulldozer video with people laughing. It was a bundle of oddities, not an airtight case. But it was enough to force a hearing. People asked me how a man in his 50s with no political machine builds pressure on a county. You use the things people care about. You tell stories that are simple. They took a bridge from a family. You make it public. You ask people to come to a hearing. You print leaflets. You talk to the rescue squad. You get the fire chief on your side. The fire chief told the county that if Old Mill Road were closed, his response times would increase. That was simple and devastating. Suddenly the county was not deciding only on paper. They were deciding about lives. If you are counting, you will see the stakes rising. They were not only losing a bridge, they were losing legitimacy. In 3 weeks, boards that had been complacent started to tremble. At the next public meeting, someone put a stack of checks on the podium. There were questions. Someone asked a simple question that made Darlene's face lose color. Why is there a payment here for a landscaping company that does not work in our county? Darlene said it was a clerical error. A clerical error that paid a contractor twice the market rate. People laughed, but not the kind of laugh that says the problem is small. The room hung on the question, and that was the moment I realized we had truly shifted the game. They had opened a door when they bulldozed my bridge. They had no idea who would walk through it. At the end of that meeting, Darlene's phone buzzed constantly. There were whispers of charges. There were conversations that never reached my ears, but reached the county prosecutor. When your opponent is sloppy and you are careful, sloppy is your ally. But we still had to use the legal tools responsibly. I could not simply shut down Old Mill Road tomorrow without consequences. I had to put them in a position where they preferred a settlement to chaos. You will see how that works in part 4. We were not cruel. We were resolute. If you have ever played a strategic game, you know the value of a tempo advantage. We had tempo. We had facts. We had witnesses. We had a reporter who did the one thing the powerful sometimes forget. She kept printing the story. I sat with my attorney, and we wrote an ultimatum notice. We did not threaten violence. We did not threaten chaos. We put it plainly, 30 days notice to close Old Mill Road to non-authorized traffic. 30 days notice to terminate any expired easement and seek fair compensation for any continued access. We also asked for mediation on damages for the demolished bridge. The county called it a bold legal pressure move. The HOA called it drastic. The neighborhood called it the day the road nearly closed. That 30-day clock did 3 things. First, it forced the HOA to decide whether to negotiate. Second, it stirred the county officials into public action. Third, it put the whole neighborhood on edge. It is surprising to watch panic move slowly. It began as whispers at the market. Then it was a group text. Then, at the barbecue, people asked their neighbors whether emergency vehicles would even arrive if Old Mill Road was closed. The fire chief called me directly. He wanted a plan. I told him the truth. We can agree to an access arrangement that keeps the road usable. But arrangements mean money, maintenance, insurance. They cannot be free. He nodded without saying it. He was not a man to stand in front of a judge. He was a man who likes to solve practical problems. With his informal support, we went to mediation. Walking into a public hearing is like walking into a play where everyone knows their lines. Darlene had her lawyers. I had mine. County officials sat between us. Cameras were set up because this was now a public story. I had one secret we kept until we needed it. I had a stack of documents. The deed, the utility paperwork with the expired note, the bank records, and the video of the demolition. I also had a budget estimate for the bridge rebuild. I had researched historically accurate restoration. I had quotes from masons who understood stone bridges. My terms were non-negotiable in my head. I wanted restoration of the bridge to the condition and style of my grandfather's workmanship. I wanted fair market compensation for any easement moving forward. And I wanted public accountability, including an apology. At the hearing, Darlene's counsel argued technicalities. He called the demolition a community improvement. He minimized the bank records as accounting anomalies. When the county council asked for proof that the utility easement had expired, I handed them the county memo with the note, "Renewal not received." The room hummed. When the prosecutor asked Darlene about missing funds, she stammered. Her campaign of small dismissals could not cover money. The final blow came when the county investigator played the demolition footage in the hearing room. The video was ugly and simple. It showed a machine and the laughter of people who thought it was a moment of triumph. When people saw the sounds and the faces, the mood changed. A councilman who had been quiet stood up and asked for criminal review. I wanted a settlement, not a spectacle, so my lawyer offered a figure. It was enough to cover the rebuild and to create a stream for an easement for 20 years. It was not vindictive. It was reasonable if they wanted peace. It also made it clear that the choice was theirs. Accept the terms and repair the wrong, or refuse and face legal proceedings that would make every detail public. In the end, they accepted. They accepted because the political cost of fighting was too high. They accepted because to fight would mean exposing more facts about permits and payments. They accepted because a man on a dirt road with a county deed and a reporter had something they feared: exposure. The agreement was public. Darlene stepped down. But this is not the end. There were consequences I did not expect. There were family fractures. There was a long, slow process of repair. And there were moments that forced me to ask whether vengeance and justice are the same thing. Next, I will tell you about the rebuilding, the apology, and what came after the settlement. I will tell you about the scholarship and the strange solace of restoring a bridge that had seen wars and floods and now, finally, had been legally restored. The rebuilt bridge looks like a prayer answered. Not loud, not dramatic, quiet, certain, earned. When they set the last stone, the mason stepped back and wiped his hands on his apron. The river kept talking the way rivers do. No ceremony, no fanfare, just water slipping by, the same way it did in my grandfather's day. Someone painted a small plaque and fixed it to the timber where the old beam had been. Pop Sullivan, 1943. It's not shiny. It's not fancy. It's right. Walking across it now, the stones still smell faintly of mortar and river. You can feel the craft and the curve. The arch holds your weight without a creak. Under your palm, the rail has the tiny ridges left by the plane. A man's tool marks, one by one. The kind of marks you only notice if you slow down. We had to slow down for this. It took more than money to rebuild it. It took months of negotiation. It took the kind of patience that makes your jaw hurt. It took craftsmen who knew how to read stone, men who still carry pencils behind their ears, men who say plumb and true like prayers. They matched the old curve of the arches with a string line and a story. One of them, a quiet mason named Ben, brought his son. The boy carried buckets and stood with his hands on his hips like supervisors do. Every afternoon, the two of them would sit on the tailgate and eat peanut butter sandwiches. They left the crust for the crows. The crows approved. I learned how to read a scaffold. I learned the smell of wet lime on a cool morning. I learned that stone has its own vocabulary. It wants to sit a certain way. Fight it, and you get cracks. Listen, and it holds. There was a day the foreman called me over. He tapped a stone with his trowel. "Hear that?" he said. It rang. Clean. Bright. Like glass. "That's how I know she's set right," he said. "Listen close," I said back. "That's what justice sounds like." He grinned. "Justice is heavy," he said. "Same as stone." After the settlement, Darlene sold her house and moved away. Not quickly, not cleanly. Houses don't like scandal. They hold smells. They hold whispers. She listed a high, then lower again. She left in a black SUV with boxes stacked wrong in the back. People talk about justice like it ends a story. It doesn't. It turns one kind of pain into another. It makes space for repair, but it does not erase what happened. The prosecutor offered her a plea on some counts. The process took longer than you think. Courtrooms move like cold syrup. Letters, hearings, stipulations, words that sound precise but feel like fog to a tired man. People I had once waved to in the grocery store looked at me differently. Not angry, not friendly, just measuring. Some of them thanked me. A woman with gray hair took my hand on the cereal aisle. "My dad was a Mason," she said. "He would have liked you." Her eyes shined. She squeezed my hand too long. Then she let go and walked away quick, embarrassed by her own kindness. Some avoided my truck. They looked down when I passed them on the road. They pretended to check their mail. I don't hold that against them. Real change makes people nervous. It's easier to keep your head down and go home. The heart is a skittish animal. The scholarship we started in my grandfather's name is small. It is not a headline. It's a wooden box with a ledger and a simple rule. Help a kid learn a real skill. We called it the Pop Sullivan Trade Scholarship. Masonry, carpentry, electrical, anything that makes a thing stand where nothing stood before. I wanted Pop's name to mean more than an old man who built a bridge. I wanted to turn destruction into opportunity. I wanted the sound of the bulldozer to become the sound of a trowel. Small sound, better sound. We got letters. Handwritten, typed. One with grease stains on the envelope. A young man wrote, "My grandfather was a bricklayer in Philly. He used to carry 4 at a time. I want to carry 3. Help me carry 3. He drew a little brick on the margin. It made me laugh out loud in the post office. The clerk smiled like she was in on the joke. Another letter came from a woman who worked nights at a diner. She wanted to learn stone carving. "I like the thought of making leaves out of rock," she wrote. "Leaves that don't die. Leave that don't die." That line stayed with me all week. I still get messages from people who say they never thought an old bridge could mean anything to someone other than a family. They say they drive past old things all the time and never think who made them. But that's the point. Sometimes the things we inherit are not land or stone. They are stories. They are obligations. They are small civic acts that keep a place from being only a place. I'm not trying to make this grand. I'm trying to make it true. If you ask me whether justice felt sweet, I will tell you this. Justice felt like the sound of masons' hammers in the morning. A tap, a pause, another tap, the rhythm of people who make. It felt like neighbors bringing coffee to workers at 7 a.m., steam curling over cups, sugar packets lined up like soldiers. It felt modest and honest. The first morning we reopened the bridge, the river ran a little high. The sun hit the water low and yellow. A boy on a red bicycle eased onto the stones, tires whispering. At the center, he stopped, put a foot down, and looked over the rail like he was counting fish. He didn't know I was watching. He didn't know anything about easements or deeds or embezzlement. He just knew a bridge got him from one side to the other. That's enough. But there are lessons from what we went through. I say we on purpose. No one does this alone. Lesson 1. Keep your records. Old paper can save you. Not copies. Originals. Signed. Stamped. Filed. Scan them. Back them up. Tell someone where the box is. If my grandfather hadn't filed that deed, if some county clerk hadn't shelved it right, if a reporter hadn't asked to see the ledger, we would be telling a different story right now. A worse story. One without a rebuilt bridge. The system moves like river rock. Slow, but it moves. Let your anger put you in the chair. Then let your notes keep you there. Rage gets you to the room. Documents let you stay. Timing matters. 30-day notices matter. Certified mail matters. Calm voices matter more than loud ones. Fire chiefs. County clerks. Masons. The guy who runs the gravel pit. The woman who manages the dispatch desk at night and knows everyone's birthday. They keep the world stitched together. When things fall apart, they know where the thread is. You do not need to go on television to fight. You do not need to shout. But public record and public voice are powerful when only one side controls the story. A clean timeline, a stack of receipts, a clip that shows what happened. You lay it out and let people see. During the rebuild, the crew found one of my grandfather's old iron nails in the sill near the abutment. Big head, square shaft, bent a little, like it had done its job, and then rested a long time. I put that nail in my pocket. It rode around with my keys for 2 months. Every time I reached in there for change, I felt its weight. It reminded me, the things we make outlast us. So do the things we break. People ask me if I have regrets. Sometimes I do. I regret the way my grandchildren cried the day the bulldozer came. The baby covered her ears and said, "Make it stop." I could not. A man who cannot protect a child from a machine feels smaller than he is. That memory gives me a sharp taste in my mouth even now. I regret that innocent people felt fear. Some families in that neighborhood had nothing to do with any of this. They bought a house. They pay their dues. They were told the rules were for safety. I don't wish chaos on anyone. When you close a road, even in theory, mothers think about ambulances. Fathers think about winter. That fear is real. But I do not regret standing up. If you stand up for anything you believe in, be ready to do the work. Legal fights are not gladiator games. They are paper, patience, showing up with a pen when everyone else shows up with a story. The slow movement of people who decide that the right thing still matters. The day the scholarship awarded its first student, we used the back room of the library. Fluorescent lights, coffee in a silver urn, cookies arranged in plastic clamshells. You know the room. Every town has one. A young woman signed her name on a single-page agreement. A little money for tools, a promise to show up to class, a short note about her goals. She wanted to learn masonry techniques. She said she liked the discipline of it. Stone doesn't care about your mood, she said. It only cares if you set it right. I thought of my grandfather bending over stone with calloused hands. He used to blow the dust off the face of a block before he set it. Gentle, almost tender. He would talk to it. "Easy, old fella," he'd say. "Let's put you to work." That day I felt like his name meant something again. Not famous, not grand, just useful. And that is the reward. You do not need a headline to be right. You need someone to keep showing up. The bridge stands now. Same as always, a small place over a river. People still fish there in summer. There's a kid who uses a stick and a string and salami from his lunch. He keeps the bread for himself. Smart kid. He waves when I cross. I wave back. In fall, leaves gather in the riffles downstream. Yellow, red, brown. The current sorts them into little islands that shift and slide. It looks like the river is thinking. In winter, you can see the arch bones of the bridge in the frost. The stones turn the color of pewter. If you step there at dawn, your breath makes a fog and the whole world sounds like a church. In spring, the river laughs and the frogs return. I stand with my hands on the rail and count the pulses of the water against the pier. If the count is high, I check the tree roots upstream. Habits keep you honest. There's a county plaque on the guardrail now. It explains the restoration and thanks the crews. It names the donors. It names the year. I asked them to keep the font plain. Times New Roman. Nothing fancy. The words should work harder than the letters. Beside the plaque is a small memorial to the people who rebuilt it. Names in a column. You read them, and you can picture the faces. Ben the mason. Maria the carpenter who cut the guard timbers in a single afternoon because rain was coming. Ed from the quarry who loaded 3 extra pallets at no charge and said, "Don't tell my boss. Actually tell him. He'll get it." The teenagers stand on the beam sometimes. They kick their heels and talk about nothing. Then one of them, always the quiet one, says he wants to work with his hands. He doesn't want to sit in front of a screen all day. The others nod without saying anything. It's a thought they didn't know they were allowed to have. They look at the plaque. They look at the river. They look at their shoes. I smile and say, "You can build things." That's allowed. They smile back like someone just gave them a permission slip they didn't know they needed. I keep a small box in my truck now. Spare gloves. Safety glasses. A tape measure. A folded copy of the deed. Laugh if you want. Paper saved us once. It may save someone else. On Sundays, I drive the line of Old Mill Road slow. I check the ditches. I pick up a beer can or two. I stop where the easement crosses the property line and make sure the little blue marker is still upright. It's not about ownership. It's about stewardship. There's a difference. One is a word on paper. The other is a habit in your hands. Once in a while, I run into an old board member at the feed store. He lowers his voice and says he's sorry for the way he voted. I tell him I'm sorry for the way I shouted. We both nod like men do when the apology doesn't need to be longer than the regret. Every town has a Darlene. Every town has a Garrett. Most people are in the middle, hoping the loud parts quiet down. The answer, I think, is not louder fights. It's clearer rules. It's neighbors who know where the paper is. It's a fire chief who says, let's think this through. It's a county clerk who files the same way every time. If you've listened this far, you know the shape of the story. A wrong was done. A bridge was destroyed. A man got angry. Then he got organized. He found the law where others forgot it. He used it like a level. He didn't tilt it. He held it steady. The bubble did the rest. I've said this before, but I'll say it again because it matters. I didn't win because I shouted. I won because I wrote things down. Because I listened to people who know more than I do. Because I paused when I wanted to swing. Because I moved when it was time. Final emotional note. Power can be used for many things. Some people build neighborhoods and make places better. Others use that power to hide mistakes and take what is not theirs. The law exists to keep those lines clear. But the law needs people who are willing to read the pages and hold the line. This was my job. I did it for my grandfather. I did it for the kids who fish off the bridge. I did it for the stone that wants to sit right and the water that wants to run clear. I did it because somebody had to, and because when someone swings a machine at your family's memory and laughs, you do not have to be cruel to be firm. You can be exact. You can be patient. You can be the kind of neighbor who fixes what others break and then asks for a fair bill to be paid. That's all I asked for. That's what we got. The year the river tried to take the bridge back, I slept in my boots. Not in a dramatic way. Not to look brave. Just because wet floors and late calls teach you to be ready. The forecast said crest by 3 a.m. The wind moved like a long sigh through the sycamores. Branches flexed. The barn door clicked against its latch. Every sound in the valley got louder, the way a house talks when it is worried. I parked the truck on the high side and walked down with a flashlight. The beam found the rail. Pale, cold, honest. The river was already out of breath, pushing brown water at the piers. You could see whole days of upstream life in the current. Sticks, a plastic bucket, somebody's tire, a red cooler that bobbed and then dove like a stubborn duck. The stones held. I put my hand on the arch and felt nothing but the slow pulse of the structure doing its job. That's the part people forget. Bridges aren't just pictures. They are promises you test in bad weather. At 1:17 a.m., a pickup eased down Old Mill. Headlights blinked, then stayed on. The fire chief stepped out with a thermos and a look that said he had eaten too much coffee and not enough sleep. He held the thermos up like a toast. "You staying?" he asked. "I'm staying," I said. He nodded. No lecture. No hero talk. He pointed at a willow root snagged against the downstream wing wall. "If that builds, we cut," he said. "But I think she's fine." He walked the line of the parapet and ran his gloved fingers along the coping stones. "Your crew set this right," he said. "You can feel it." He told me a story while we watched the river, about his first flood as a rookie, about how the captain back then used to spit into the current and call it rent. "We pay the river," the captain would say. "We borrow the banks." We stood quiet after that. 2 men, 1 bridge, 1 river. The simple math of a night that might go either way. By 3:00 for the gauge read, just under crest. By 3:21 it started to drop. Not by much. Enough to move the lump in my throat back where it belongs. He clapped my shoulder. "Get warm," he said. "Chief," I said. "Thanks." "For what?" he said. "For showing up." He shrugged in the way of men who think showing up is the smallest thing. He got his truck. He eased back up the grade. Taillights faded. The night closed. I walked the deck once more and listened. The river's voice softened from a shout to a lecture, then finally to a conversation. On the far bank, a barn light clicked off. That was the valley's way of saying, "Good enough." We got sun the next day. The kind of sun that smells like cut grass, even when no one is cutting grass. I set the orange sawhorses aside and rolled the closed for high water sign into the shed. A boy on a scooter in a blue parka asked if it was safe. I told him, safer than yesterday. He nodded, which was all the assurance he needed. He scooted across, one foot pushing, the other planted on the deck like a flag of victory. A week later, the apology ran in the paper. Not big, not bold. Page 3, right column, above the fold, but smaller than the car dealer ad. We had worked on the wording. The county attorney sent drafts. My lawyer crossed out spin. I added one sentence and made them keep it. We regret the harm caused to the Sullivan family and to the wider community by our actions, and we accept responsibility without reservation. That's the line. Without reservation. You could feel people exhale when they read it. A valve released. The town returned one notch closer to itself. Some folks cut the apology out and taped it inside kitchen cabinets, right next to old recipes and a phone list with numbers crossed out and replaced as the years go by. I saw one posted behind the register at the feed store. The owner had highlighted "without reservation" with a pink marker and drawn a little star beside it. No victory parade. No told you so. Just the plain mercy of a sentence that said what happened, said it was wrong, and said in public, we did it. The first parade across the bridge wasn't really a parade. It was the Memorial Day walk the town does every year. Flags. A high school drumline that never gets the downbeat right. Scout troops where half the kids wear uniforms and half wear soccer jerseys. The same pastor with the same folded paper. The same veteran in the same cap who never cries but always clears his throat too long. They changed the route that year so the column would cross the bridge on their way to the cemetery. The drumline hit the deck and the whole valley got heartbeat. I stood off to the side by the willow that survived the flood like it had survived everything. Halfway across, the drummer on the end looked down at the stones and tapped a soft roll just for himself, like drummers do when they love the way sound comes back. The roll skittered along the arch and came back with a little echo the bridge keeps for special things. He smiled into his own snare. He didn't know I saw it. I did. I kept that smile in my pocket for a week. After the service, the pastor shook my hand and said, "Bridges are sacraments where I come from." He smiled. "I won't argue theology with you. Just know, people notice when the right things stand." The scholarship interviews that summer felt different. Where it spread. We had 3 chairs and a pitcher of water that sweated onto a paper plate. We asked each kid the same 2 questions. What do you want to learn? And who will you help? One boy said, "I want to learn to be the guy who shows up when the roof is leaking and the winter's in the mail." The phrasing was crooked and perfect. We all wrote it down. A girl with freckles and work boots too clean to trust, yet said, "I want to run a masonry crew that pays on Fridays and quits on time." She had a list in a notebook. Wages, safety, apprenticeships, one line that said, "Don't yell," and another that said, "Bring popsicles when it's hot." We didn't even pretend to debate. We stamped her application and told her to go buy a trowel with a handle that fit her hand. Some nights the past still walks through the house. Not in nightmares. In chores. Late mail from the courthouse. Email from a neighbor about the easement terms. A kid from the crew sending a photo of his first solo job with a caption that says, "Plum," and a photo of a level where the bubble is dead center. That's my kind of ghost story. Old trouble turned into new pride. Darlene's name doesn't come up much now. When it does, people lower their voices like a dish might break if you say it too loud. I don't want her in my mouth. I want her in the file drawer labeled lesson. Power should build porches and shade, not alibis. I still walk Old Mill on Sundays. I still pick up what the week leaves. I still nod at the marker where the easement crosses and remind myself that stewardship is the long work. It has no drumline. It has no headline. It's the same path, walked often enough that the grass learns your name. 10 winters later, the bridge looks older than the day we reopened it. That's praise. New work should learn to be old. The mortar lost its chalky shine. The stones picked up a quiet coat of lichen, the color of memory. Somewhere a wren finds a gap under the rail and thinks, home. I keep a copy of the apology in my glove box. Not to gloat, to remember. Beside it, I keep the first scholarship application we ever stamped and the iron nail we found in the silt. When the world gets loud, I take that nail out and put it in my palm. I close my hand around it and feel the square edges press my skin. It's a good pain, the kind that says, you're holding something real. People ask if I do anything differently. I would plan earlier, photograph more, start the scholarship sooner, teach myself, again, to breathe slow before I speak. But the bones of it, the part where we stood up, wrote it down, and stayed until the bubble was centered? No, that part one would do every time. The boy with the red bicycle is taller now. He works weekends at the lumberyard. He waves when he drives the forklift, grinning like he stole something and plans to return it better than he found it. I told him the bridge will hire him for maintenance if he learns to sharpen a chisel. He said, "Sir, I'll sharpen too." There's a line I use when people bring me a story of their own. They come with folders and phones and a face that says they've been living too long with a hard thing. I pour coffee. I listen. When they finish, I say, "We'll do this slow. We'll do it right. We'll read the pages. We'll talk to the people who keep the lights on and the sirens ready. Then we'll make a plan you can live with." They exhale, not because the plan is easy, because it is plain. Plain wins. Fancy folds. Here is what I want the record to say for anyone who needs it. You can fight without becoming what you're fighting. You can stand without shouting. You can hold the line with a pen. You can rebuild what someone broke and make it mean more than it did before. The bridge is proof. If you walk it at dusk, the stones give back a little warmth they stole from the day. Birds trade notes across the river like old men trading baseball cards. Shadows stretch from the rail down into the water, and the water tries them on the way tailors pin a suit. I stop in the middle. I put my palm on the timber where the plaque sits, and I talk to my grandfather, just soft enough that only he and the river can hear. "Pop, we kept it," I say. "We kept it honest. Your name's working again." I think he hears me in the way the duckweed swirls. I think the river says good in a language you only hear if you've stayed long enough to learn it. A week before this writing, the scholarship board voted to add a new tool grant. Chisels for stone, brushes for mortar joints, a pair of knee pads that won't betray you on cold concrete. We wrote a note to the kids. If you take care of your tools, they'll tell you the truth. We signed our names. We folded the letters. We licked the envelopes like we were sealing something holy. The mailbox clanged in the afternoon wind. The flag went down. Somewhere a sorting machine took our plain words and sent them out to become work in someone else's hands. That's the best kind of magic I know. Not fireworks. Not speeches. Mail. Plain paper that goes where it's sent and sits there waiting to be opened by a person with a name. Tonight the bridge will cool in the dark. Deer will step soft across the approach and pretend they don't see me leaning on the rail. A fox will pass, sure of itself. The river will keep its appointment with the ocean. The sky will wear 1,000 quiet lights. And if a storm comes, we will do what we always do. We will show up. We will listen. We will set the next stone true. Because this was never about winning. It was about keeping what matters in working order. It was about proving that memory can be maintained just like mortar. It was about teaching our hands to say enough and again at the right times. So if you're standing at your own river tonight, if someone laughed while they broke what your family made, hear me. Keep your records. Keep your calm. Keep your neighbors close. Keep your feet on the deck of whatever bridge you're trying to save. And when the time comes, write the letter, file the paper, call the chief, and meet the mason at dawn. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You have to be steady. Steady wins. Every time. If this story spoke to you, subscribe. Share it with a friend who needs proof that patience, paper, and steady neighbors can beat petty power. Drop your story in the comments. What's the bridge in your life that you're fighting to keep? I read them. If you want practical help, say toolkit, and I'll post a free checklist. Records to gather, offices to visit, questions to ask, and the exact letters that start a clean paper trail. Power should build, not hide. Bridges should stand, not vanish. Keep your records. Keep your stories. They matter.